How has the internet and social media and multimedia changed your job as a sports talk host?
It has changed it immensely. First off, Twitter is, if you're a radio host, especially in sports, if not any other sort of format, if you're a sports radio host and you don't use Twitter, I think I've got a one up on you already. It is the place to go. Before I get out of bed, before I get out of bed, I pick up my phone, I press Twitter, and that's my newspaper. And I'm reading it before I even throw the covers off of me. It is your news. It's also got opinion from people that you follow, and probably one of the more underrated things about it is you can hear from athletes. You don't necessarily need a press conference anymore to hear from an athlete. While that's always good, especially in the radio format because there's sound associated with it, with Twitter at least you do have a quote. You've got a quote from a guy that you follow on a regular basis. So it's completely changed the landscape of things. While the internet has always been around, while I've been doing a talk show, I've been doing a talk show since 2005. And while the internet's always been a part of it, I can't imagine what guys that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, I can't imagine what they did before to be able to put together a good talk show with a newspaper, maybe a 2-minute sportscast on a television at night, maybe Sports Center, and that's it. And other than that, you got to roll. Now the news comes from so many different directions, and the news is so saturated that sometimes things that probably weren't news 20 years ago are news now because of the internet, but all the more well for sports radio hosts. Lots of stories out there. So I can't imagine what it was like 20 years ago without the internet, but I know I sure do appreciate that and social media these days.
They add a lot of streams of information. How do you navigate that to find good stuff for your show?
It's tough. It's tough. It basically, it's just one of those things where if I have an opinion, if I'm hot on it, if I'm passionate about whatever I just read, then I'm going to go with my instinct and go for it on air in most situations. That's how I navigate through it. There's so much, but we're getting to the point now, like here in St. Louis. Jeff Fisher is the new head coach of St. Louis Rams. But while he was being courted, we would get emails from listeners and tweets from listeners saying, "Hey, a plane just left. I saw it online. A plane just left from X location to St. Louis." And I'm pretty sure that Jeff Fisher has got to be on that plane. It's the owner's private plane. It's got to be. It's this sort of plane, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that you want to talk about a crazy use of the internet, but that's something you would push away. Obviously, you go, okay, I'm not real hot on that. I don't care. Okay, and I'm hoping that my instinct is right in assuming that a lot of the other listeners don't care that a flight may or may not be in the air and may or may not hold the new head coach of the St. Louis Rams. I mean, it's tough to further the story from there. It's tough to make that into a topic. So, but the very next thing that comes up on your Twitter feed or on ESPN.com or on Sports by Brooks, the Big Lead, any sort of website, maybe that is something that I'm passionate on. So it's just one of those things where I've got a filter in my head that I'm hoping is that I'm hot on some of it, and I'm hoping that the listeners will be as well, and that's how I roll.
Do you have any thoughts about about using it as making your show kind of interactive?
Oh, social media is we do it all the time. We use Facebook and Twitter and a text machine like they're going out of style. We don't use the phone as much as we used to. At least not here. We don't use phone calls as much as we used to. There's nothing wrong with phone calls. In fact, I enjoy a good phone call if it's screened properly, etc. But with Twitter and Facebook and a text line, you are now able to control the messages. There'll be a lot of times where you can get, especially if you don't have a good call screener, you can get a call that comes through that you're going, oh, this is making the show worse. You know, that was a bad use of 10 seconds of the show. Whereas now I can use all the mentions that I get on Twitter. I can use all the messages that I get on Facebook, all the messages through the text line, and I can pick and choose the ones that I think can add good quality to the radio show. So now we can cherry pick good opinions that we may or may not agree with, but that can be used for good fodder for a show. That isn't a guarantee when you use a phone call. So the interactive part of all of these social mediums, and a text line, I think have made sports talk radio better than it was when you could just have a phone call. I think when you get the right phone call, that's gold. I mean, especially in a one-man show. I mean, who wants to hear the same voice for that long? That's why with a one-man show, more interviews and more phone calls, I would think. But there's a school of thought that I don't necessarily disagree with. I'm probably in the middle somewhere, but there's a school of thought that says these listeners came to listen to your opinion, not some guy on the street, because those listeners think they're smarter than that guy anyway. So why would you want to put that guy on? And I understand where that school of thought's coming from. I get it. I don't disagree with it. But I think there is a happy medium. I do like a call or two if they're used properly.